There will be more flights than ever. Any one of them could blow up in the middle of the sky without warning. That's why we're asking all Americans to tell their families that they love them before taking off.
The agency also released a list of important questions to ask yourself or your seatmate during your flight, including, should the wing be doing that? What is that whirring noise? And do all planes shake this much? They're reminding passengers that even the smallest amount of turbulence could mean you're headed toward a sudden explosive death. While hurtling through the sky at unimaginable speeds in a steel coffin can feel like gambling with your life, the FAA says there are ways to regain the illusion of control.
If you're worried about crashing, why not switch your flight at the last second? It might just save your life. Or kill you, depending on which plane crashes.
And for those who aren't flying this holiday, the FAA has reminded everyone that a plane could fall out of the sky right on top of you at any moment.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Welcome to Declare Your Independence on the Free Talk Live Network.
It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah. Undefeated here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, from the Sonoran Desert out west of Phoenix, about an hour and a half. Oh, we're making progress here on the occupytheland.org homestead. Donna and she knows how to do backhoe now. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, she knows how to do backhoe. She goes, I want to go. You know how to do backhoe. Well, can't you make it? You know how to do backhoe. So we're having fun. We're going to be sharing a lot more of that with you. Now, today, we have a special foreign guest. Now, is it Ian or Ian Davis? Now, Ian Davis comes to us from a listener that just, is a big fan, and he's like, Ernie, you got to talk, to Ian. It's Ian, right?
No, it's Ian.
Ian, because it's IAIN, and he's from Great Britain, so God knows how they pronounce it. Anyway, so Ian Davis, he's a writer, a journalist, he's an author. He blogs at Ian Davis, IAIN Davis.com. Ian. Guys, see, I think I'm going to say Ian or Ian. It's Ian. Ian Davis. If I get it wrong, correct me, please. Ian also writes for a number of other independent media outlets, such as Unlimited Hangout, Geopolitics and Empire, Bitcoin Magazine. Yeah, so he knows Whitney Webb. We have Whitney on here. He's done, his work is regularly featured and republished by others, including The Off Guardian, Lou Rockwell, Technocracy News and Trends, The Corbett Report. Do a show with James Corbett and I for years, every other week for a long time. And that is one, kind of who you were compared to a lot. You're best. I go, well, who is he? Well, Ian Davis is kind of like UK Corbett. And I'm going, okay. I wanted to make sure that we got to be introduced to Ian because, and we'll scroll some of his books up here. But first, tell us about your book here, Pseudo-Pandemic. That'd be a good start. This is an actual imprint book. You have a lot of PDFs of online ebooks or whatever that are out there for people, but this is an actual publication that you've done that you're proud of. Tell us about this, will you please?
Yeah, I mean, that's my second book. My first was called A Dangerous Ideology, and my most recent one's The Manchester Attack. that has been published, as a paperback that you can get hold of. I was aware I think I published Pseudo Pandemic in 2021, because when the whole pandemic narrative started, as someone that was already kind of aware of the use of propaganda to manipulate us, and when I started looking at the statistics around mortality and so forth, I pretty quickly realised that something was amiss with what we were being told about it. And then I started looking into it more. And the reason that I wrote Pseudo Pandemic, and the reason that I thought it was important to publish it as well as a book, was that everything that is in that book, all the information that is provided in that book, is in the public domain. It was already in the public domain, right, but it was being discounted by what I would call the legacy media, or some people call the mainstream media. It was being discounted, it was being called conspiracy theory, it was being labelled as disinformation or misinformation, but nonetheless, it was all information that people needed to be, I thought, people needed to have access to and needed to be aware of. So I wrote Pseudo Pandemic to ensure, or to try to put out some sort of compendium of information that was in the public domain but was being dismissed. So for things like the fact that 2020, the so-called year of the pandemic in the UK, was the 9th highest year of all-cause mortality in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. So it was a mid-ranking year in terms of all-cause mortality, age-standardized all-cause mortality. So, there was no evidence of this so-called pandemic if you looked at it from that perspective. And I argued that, and I wasn't alone. There were a lot of doctors, a lot of leading physicians, a lot of scientists, world-renowned scientists that were speaking out, saying something was wrong with this narrative, and just being dismissed and attacked, actually, by the legacy media. So it was important to me to put a record of that out into the public domain, so that people have got one source that they could go to one of the things that I guess I'm quite fastidious about in my work is that I footnote everything. So I try not to. We can't avoid it, but I try not to make any claims that I can't evidence. If I can't evidence it, I don't.
How was the book received?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, it was received very well.
The Crown gave you, a medal. you got a knighthood or something.
The idea that a publisher in the UK might publish that book is just, there's no chance. They just wouldn't. So I had to self-publish it. I have to self-publish everything that I put out as a book, because no publishers. That's one of the problems. No publisher's going to touch books like that. There are some that might, but basically speaking, you're not going to get a lot of joy out of trying to put information like that into before what, for want of a better expression, you might call a mainstream publisher, because they're not going to touch it with a barge pole.
This is really where I was hoping we could go with this. I'm going to make a statement. I want you to comment on it, and we're going to get into this subject if you don't mind. This is what's of interest to me. I realized probably, years ago, that broadband, when it first started coming out, and it hit different countries and different areas, continents around the world differently, like America was, we're still waiting on whatever, but people such as yourself that have something to say, that have some information they want to share, and to get an audience and to build up, and I have a perspective, and all of a sudden your Substack goes crazy and everybody wants to be your buddy. That is done by people that had access to broadband internet. When you're on the internet, You are not streaming. You are not doing these kinds of Zoom conferences. And now we're out in the middle of the desert, but Starlink is around. This is kind of the point I want to make, is that in the past, I've been doing this since the late 80s as an activist, doing kind of up and what you find out is that the people with perspective that are able to share, that have a live stream that can upload a video, are in the urban areas. They're in where there is an internet, access. Now, there are others. There were some podcasters they would do, and then they'd travel somewhere, and then they'd upload, that kind of thing. So it's not 100%. But we have not gotten, until recently, it's just starting, to where you get the voice of the rural residents out in any country. They are in the farmer, rancher, miner, logger of whatever. Not a lot of them have a lot of, YouTube hangouts where they're, talking this about that. So I am seeing from around the world, you're in the UK, we have us here, James is in Japan. It's, and there's still kind of urban areas. Like Corbett, he got an apartment that had fiber, and in early 2000s, he's like, whoa, watch me do some research, so that's how that happened. So access to a broadband internet has been conducive to voices around the world, and even in first world nations like UK and America, you're now starting to get the reaction, the perspective, the truth about what's happening with farmers, ranchers, miners, loggers. It's amazing that you have this perspective. When that starts coming in and challenging the narrative, I go, hey man, don't be telling me about farmer. I have a farm. I'm sitting here standing here in the field. Watch this, and this is what's going on, and this is what's happening. Well, with COVID, and the lockdowns and all that that was starting to happen. When you see that, you're going, yep, they, them, those are done. The mainstream media, the media so last century, is over. Here we go. Well, it's happened. When you have voices out there that provide this kind of perspective or have been experienced and they share and they, just have, it's just pleasant to listen to them, like you. So I need to know, and I want the audience to be introduced to you so we can find out there's another outpost. It's a UK. Now, I don't know how urban or rural you are, but I mean, you're not in America, okay? So we get another perspective. So I want to know, and in your bio was something to do with, social work, healthcare. You were in something that was less fulfilling than I want to go do this. I want to know why. I want to know what grandmother, what brother, what employer, what coach, what teacher, what something motivated you to even give a crap about this stuff. To tell the truth, to get the real perspective, because that is a decision. That is the way you are. That is something that interests. That's what you get up for. You're going to go take a look. I want to know why. And if there's a secret sauce, as I talk to people, and I do this, on an irregular basis, when I have someone like you that we're new friends with, who want to get introduced to the audience, I want to know why. Why do you do this? Why do you think you had something to add? Why did you have the confidence to go up against these guys? Why? Since I started doing radio in 2003, I was like, nobody ever asked why anymore. They just, this is a narrative, repeat it. And I go, why? Why did this, why? You're not allowed to ask why, okay? So
well,
I want to know,
can ask me.
Why? Go, start from the beginning. You were,
right, so
6.5 years old of something.
I mean, really, it's whether it's dumb luck, whether it's nature or nurture, I don't know. But I was very fortunate, really, that my dad, when I was a kid, and he told me this when I was so young, I don't even remember him telling me the first time. But he just told me to, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. Question everything. It was just as simple as that. My dad my dad told me that I was very my grandfather, my father's father, he was very opinionated and a very good kind of orator and loved arguing. My dad didn't like arguing so much, but my grandfather did, and I spent many a happy, days, whole weeks arguing with my grandfather, because I think by the time I was about probably about 12, 13, something around that age, I was slightly to the left of Trotsky, and my grandfather was as dyed-in-the-wool, small C and big C conservative as you could possibly imagine. So we used to just row about everything. Politics. I was very, very interested in politics as a kid. I mean, I don't remember when this question arose, but I remember I kind of got a vague memory of sitting in the back of the car, of my mum and dad's car, thinking, how does one group of people manage to control millions of other people? How do they do that? How is that possible? Right, and so that was a question that arose for me as a young person, and that kind of led to my interest in politics, and I was politically quite active in my sort of teens and sort of around the time when I was going through my education.
Wait. Let's go back to this, how does a small group control another? I mean, what did they come at you with? He pulled a sword from a stone? I mean, how did, what was the answer to that question?
Well, I mean, inevitably, I would read about kind of reading up about politics and how our political system works. The history of and again, I suppose it was very UK based, but how we moved from a feudal society through things like the Constitution. I was aware of Runnymede 1215 and the Magna Carta and British political history, separation of powers, how that's all supposed to function. So I was interested in, inevitably I became interested in party politics, but I was more interested, I have to say, in the function of politics. I was more interested in what it is. How does authority, how is that exerted? And I didn't have any concept. I knew nothing about kind of really kind of libertarian thinking or any kind of sort of voluntarist or anarchist kind of ideology. I knew nothing about that. I was purely interested in how would you say, a kind of sort of traditional UK political history and political kind of mechanisms, how the state functioned, but not because I would say not because I had any kind of particular awareness or any value, or not that I placed any kind of value judgment on the state. I didn't. I was just interested by it.
Okay, so, now this is where I get annoying. Why?
Why? Why?
I had it's very okay. The reason I do this on occasion with someone like yourself is that I'm very interested in why someone like you would even ask why. If I could bottle that, if you get the secret sauce, if you can put it in a cartoon for kids, if you can put it in an ad, a bumper sticker, it'd be something like question everything, question authority, hang it up by its wrist, cut off its toes and fingers and let it drip dry. I mean, I want to know that attitude. Why? I wanted to understand why. There's a grandmother, there's a father, there's something there at a certain age that people, there's a trigger for they start down this path of asking or questioning and they're not satisfied with the non-answers they're getting or something. You see my point?
Yeah. But I think it develops over time, and it can only come from life experience, right?
Yep.
So I developed my political sensibilities, party political sensibilities, or my concept of that I thought the egalitarianism of socialism was better than what I perceived to be the kind of dictatorial oppression of kind of centre-right politics, right? So that's what I thought, because I thought it was important. I suppose I come from a working class background, so for me, like, the working class was important, and I knew that the people that I knew and the people that I spent my time with, I mean, this is something that occurred to me quite early on. I knew some brilliant people. I mean, my dad, I would give an example of my father, actually. He could make anything. He could, by contrast, I'm completely useless, but he could make anything. He was an engineer. He could design anything. He could make anything. I knew people that I used to speak to through my grandfather. He was part of the Ministry of Defence. My grandfather was quite high up in the Ministry of Defence. Well, he got to be quite high up in the kind of procurement side of the Ministry of Defence. So I met quite a lot of military people, and they were very intelligent and very knowledgeable. I also had, and this is another important thing, my mum and dad used to run a B&B, right? They used to earn a bit of bed and breakfast. That's I don't know whether you have them in the States. A B&B is bed and breakfast. Right. So people come and stay with you. So my mum and dad used to have students coming and staying with them from all over the world. So, foreign language students, because there was a foreign language place up the road from near where I lived. So we get these foreign language students come and stay. So we had people from everywhere, from, Japan, from China, from the US, from everywhere, to come and stay at my mum and dad's in B&B, and so where they'd be sat round the dinner table. So we'd be talking about all sorts of things. So I had all this kind of input coming in, and I also had that underpinning from my dad to question everything, and from my grandfather was firmly of the view that you've got to be self-reliant. No one's going to do you any favors. It's dog eat dog. That was his I guess that comes from his life experience. So when I got to started becoming an adult, people say, oh, I'm proud to be working class, or I'm proud to be this, or I'm proud to be that. I don't see how you can be proud of something you haven't actively done, right? I was and am working class by happenstance. I was born that way, right? I didn't choose it. It's not like I achieved becoming working class. I just am working class, right? But nonetheless, I knew that the people that are around me were incredibly capable people, right? Really capable people that are just as capable of making the right decision or the wrong decision as what I could see with the people that were supposedly in charge, right? So I thought, well, hang on, you'll know better than they are, so how come you're making a decision? How come you are and they're not? Right? So that's what started me to, I ended up sort of kind of going, I guess, to the left of politics, because I thought that there was something wrong. And this is something that we have in the in the UK, perhaps, well, certainly more than you have in the US, in a kind of sort of formal concept of class structure.
Never in my whole life did I swear allegiance to him.
It matters not. He is your king.
My name is Angel Rach. I'm a mother of 2 teenage children, and I fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to use the medicine that saved my life. I've been permanently disabled for 10 years, with an inoperable brain tumor, wasting syndrome, and several other serious conditions. For 4 years, I was in a wheelchair, in so much pain, I couldn't even hug my kids. The hardest part was looking in their eyes and seeing how much they were suffering because of my medical condition. The medicine that gave me my life back and gave my kids their mom back was cannabis, also known as medical marijuana. With medical marijuana, I can walk, maintain my weight, and I can be a mom. Without it, my doctors believe that I would die. To learn more about medical marijuana, contact Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. The aircraft crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day, killing 38 people. The Kremlin has warned against speculating over the cause of the crash while it's still being investigated. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. In his Christmas message, the US president-elect reiterated his country's claim to the waterway, which cuts through the American continent, allowing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to converge, acting as a major marine transportation route. Benji Haya reports.
In announcing his pick for ambassador to Panama, Donald Trump again insisted the Central American nation is, quote, ripping off the United States. Over the years, fees have risen to access the channel, which was built by the US back in the early 1900s and handed over to Panama 25 years ago. The president-elect wants to reassert control over the key trade artery, arguing China is expanding its influence in the channel. Panama has hit back. Its president maintains the canal's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. And neither are Greenland's. The Prime Minister of the world's biggest island has told Donald Trump that the Danish territory is not for sale either, following Trump's suggestion that he'll try to buy it for national security purposes.
Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. Most of the victims are believed to be women and children. Calling the attack cowardly, the Taliban is now vowing retaliation. Ishan Garg has more.
A Pakistani airstrike in Afghanistan's Paktika province has become the latest flashpoint between the two neighbors. Though Islamabad is yet to comment on the attack, military officials speaking to news agencies say they carried out the strike against a camp of the Pakistani Taliban, a group known as the TTP. The Taliban-led Afghan government says close to half the people killed in the strike were women and children. They claim none of the people who have died were associated with the TTP, a group seen as a terrorist organization by Islamabad. It comes just days after a Pakistani Taliban attack killed 16 Pakistani military personnel close to Paktika province along the border region. Pakistan has seen countless such attacks in the past 2 decades, and it blames the Taliban government for aiding the TTP. Taliban officials in Kabul have criticized the strikes, saying it's a blatant violation of all international principles. They are threatening retaliatory strikes against the Pakistani army, further escalating tensions between the two countries.
And finally, a family dispute at a US airport in Arizona has seen 3 people injured by gunfire and another stabbed. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org.
Freedom's the answer. What's the question? You're listening to Ernest Hancock.
Welcome back to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, on the Free Talk Live Network. Our guest this evening is Ian Davis, IAIN Davis.com. Now, he's a United Kingdom blogger, journalist, and, a mature guy that knows what's up. And he published all over the place. Other independent media outlets, such as Unlimited Hangout, Geopolitics and Empire, Bitcoin Magazine. He's been published on Off Guardian, Lou Rockwell, Technocracy News and Trends, and the Corbett Report. So this is audience members that encouraged us to reach out to Ian, and they contacted him for us to do this show, and I really enjoyed it. And you need these perspectives from around the world and what is being experienced by people in the United Kingdom, Europe, everywhere. It definitely rhymes with what's going on here.
Let's give a listen and see what we all have in common.
In the UK, perhaps, well, certainly more than you have in the US, in a kind of sort of formal concept of class structure. So that is, you know, I mean, the UK is riven with it. You know, it's like everyone's got this, and one of the things now from where I am now, you know, in terms of political ideology, I guess, is that, you know, something that it really literally makes my flesh crawl to watch people supplicate themselves in front of the royal family like they're some sort of deity, right? So that kind of thing has developed through experience, my life experience. So I was never going to do something that I thought was exploitative, right? There's no way that I was going to work in a bank. It just wasn't going to happen, right?
So the people didn't seem as
I went to.
It didn't seem like cattle to you. You know, I want to get back to the exchange students, the foreign students that came in, because that would definitely, you know, send you down a path. You have people from all over the world sitting at the dinner table. They're interested in your culture. You're interested in theirs, I'm sure. But they would ask, why? Why do you guys do this? Why is that? Why? And if you don't have an answer, you know, it's kind of a little bit of embarrassment. You live in the country and you don't know. So you go find out. Or you answer them. Or you listen to your father, grandfather, and the conversation or whatever. Because when you have people visiting from other places, they're going to ask questions that you just take for granted. Well, because it's the crown. They have the jewels. I mean, you know, whatever, you know. So you get that. That is the kind of thing that I'm talking about that can send you down this path. Do you think those students being there asking stuff kind of influenced you questioning?
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I mean, but more, you know, I mean, more the thing that influenced me more was when I started working with, because I just started working in the care sector, but I was working with mental health, people with mental health needs, and then I ended up working in forensic hospitals, supporting, you know, people that are that have got severe mental illness. And then I started kind of getting more involved in the kind of management side of it, and started getting involved with budgets and budget allocation and bid writing and all that kind of thing. And it was at that point, I think, and I was probably how old was I then? I was probably about late 20s, early 30s, that I started seeing just how deleterious the system that we call government is. If we think that the purpose of government is to serve and protect the people, right? And if we think that the quality of government is defined by the extent to which it is able to serve and protect its most vulnerable members of the community, its most vulnerable citizens, then what I quickly gathered when I started looking at how decisions are made just at a local political level is that nothing could be further from the truth. That it is just about bean counting. It is just about manoeuvring for position if you're a local political councillor or whatever, and that the people are really of little or no consequence. So you know, that started me on a different kind of or started thinking about things in a different way. Now, also at the time, I was a union rep as well. And I've been a union rep for a number of different unions. And then I started kind of, you know, and I'd always kind of written short pieces for like union magazines and things like that, and, you know, newsletters and that kind of thing, work newsletters and that kind of thing. So that got me more into the writing side of it. And then I was one of the problems, and I've worked in both the private sector and the public sector, probably about 50-50. One of the problems with that sector, in both the public and the private sector actually, is habitual redundancy, because funding rounds, they probably last about 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, whatever project you're working on, you don't know whether the funding's going to continue. Often it doesn't, and that means that you'll either be shuffled off to do something else that you probably don't want to do, or get made redundant. Now, I've been made redundant about 4 or 5 times, I think, in my life.
Made redundant. I don't think it means what we think it means. You know, what do you mean redundant?
Unemployed, sacked.
Oh, that's a new UK word for us. All right, I got redundant. Okay,
yeah,
so you were like extra redundant. You get fired. Okay, I get it. All right.
Yeah, so you get sacked, right? So you know surplus to requirements.
All right, I understand.
And I think the last time that happened, I'd already started the blog because I was writing about these things that interest me, and it was a hobby. It was just a hobby, and then because I'd started writing the blog and I got made redundant again. By this time, I was probably how old was I then? I was probably about mid-40s, I suppose, early to mid-40s. I'm mid-50s now. I'm 54 now. So I thought, right, I'm going to give this a go. So I did a vocational qualification as a journalist to just try and, learn a little bit more about the trade, I suppose, and try and develop some sort of craft. Although I have to say that, what I learned wasn't particularly useful. And then started writing more seriously. And I was very fortunate that, my writing came to the attention of some people and they started promoting my work. I got picked up I was very fortunate that an outlet called UK Column started sharing a lot of my work, and Off Guardian started reprinting my work. And it is very much kind of like, or republishing my work, and it is very much word of mouth, isn't it? I mean, once you start, then hopefully you can start trying to earn a living at it. I mean, it's hand to mouth stuff, but I mean, I don't mind that. I've been there before. I've been unemployed for quite long periods in my working life, so I've been used to living in with no money. So I mean, I don't.
So who do you think, or what is the success of your Substack? Is it the platform, that provides for this opportunity for support? Is it, a campaign? Was it just a certain individual? I mean, what do you think you owe your success to?
Well, I don't know. For a start, I don't know that I've been particularly successful.
You're breathing in and out. I mean, you're doing what you want to. You're doing what you want to do.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm very, very. I count myself as very fortunate because probably after 30 odd years of working in the work, the normal or the kind of work environment that most people are accustomed to, I am for the first time in my life earning a living doing something that I really care about, that I'm really passionate about. And that's, that's not to say that when I was working with people I did a lot of work with drug and alcohol services, supporting people in recovery and that kind of thing. I did a lot of that, and I cared very much about the welfare of the people, and that I was working with, and I wanted to see them recover and support them to recover, and enable them to recover as best as they could. And the same was true when I was working with every other client that I ever worked with. And one of the things that I always felt when I was working with people and supporting people in those kind of services was that you're constantly battling against the system. You're always trying to bend the system a bit and always trying to make it work for the client in their best interests, rather than it being something that you can access to enable the clients to be that, to get the service that you think they desire. So it's that always stuck in my mind.
This is a good foundation for us to operate from. we get to know you a little bit, your motivations, your class or where you've come from and your motivations. And now we get to where you started actively engaging on these issues. You come out, you write books, you do commentary. What was your first foray into expressing yourself to a wider audience? Was it an email list? Was it a Facebook channel? Was it a Twitter handle? I mean, what was it that you actually started writing and sharing? And what was the issue?
It was my blog. It was my blog, and I'm not sure what the first article I ever wrote, but the first article I ever wrote, I think, was called "Why Critical Thinking is Important," or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Why we need to think critically, or something like that. And I even looked at the kind of the history of how things like the Trivium method developed, and rhetoric and so forth, and the function of that, and why and I think I remember writing about the golden age, the golden age, and how the scientific method developed, and so that was what I was writing about, which is not surprising, actually, because that, given our conversation, in fact, it's only just talking to you now that's occurred to me. I was always, when I was first interested in politics, it was the nuts and bolts of how it functioned that was interesting to me. And you say why, it comes back to the question why. So kids have got interest in lots and lots of different things, right? They always want to, some kids want to know how things work. Now, for some kids, that leads them into engineering, or that leads them into, design, or it leads them into something like that. But for me, I wanted to know how society worked. I wanted to know the mechanism of it. I wanted to know how it functioned. I was less interested in what people wanted to get out of it. I was more interested in, the functioning of it and how it operates. So consequently, when I started writing more earnestly, the first stuff that I started looking at was all related to, how we think, not necessarily what we think. What are the basic principles that are important that enable us to make decisions effectively, that kind of stuff, rather than I think that this is wrong, or I think that is right. Do you know what I mean? So that's how I started. And then over the years, I mean, when did I first start? So probably about 20, I think it was about 2011 or something like that, or 2012, or maybe a bit later. I can't quite remember, but it was just gradually writing more and more stuff. And you're right, what you said about you've got this moment, and I think something that I mean, one thing that I would say is that I'm very honoured that anyone would even think of comparing me to someone like James Corbett, because I don't consider myself to be on the same level as him by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, his work over decades has been absolutely amazing. I mean, and he was a great inspiration to me. I mean, I was watching his videos about the Federal Reserve and so forth and all that years ago. So I mean, that's all stuff that, in fact, I would say actually James Corbett's approach. So if there's anything that particularly inspired me about James, which again goes back to what we were talking about, the nuts and bolts bit, is James Corbett's approach of evidencing everything, of presenting evidence and then saying, here's the evidence, and this is what I conclude from the evidence that, so that which, going back to the Trivium method or whatever, grammar and everything, that is what I kind of hoped to emulate, I guess, with my work. is to just put the evidence out in front of people and say, here it is. This is what I make of it. But I mean, what do you make of it? What do you think? Because it's not up to me to tell you what to think.
This will get us to the next series of revelations that I want to get to. Now that we understand the environment, you come in, you kind of, you know, whoa, what did I do?
Your smile speaks books to me.
Freddie Mercury singing at me.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck just happened? Somebody touched something. The one thing that, what the crap?
Oh, a bit Led Zeppelin. Now we're talking.
Okay, what? See, the thing of what something is. Hold on a second. Let me make sure it's not. Okay, I don't know. It just starts playing the music. It triggers. All right, we'll try this again. Let me go to he and I. Yeah, you know, it's they, them, those being butthead. All right. This goes to where I kind of wanted to get going anyway, is that I wanted to know that there is a base, a foundation for a lot of us that, you know, the incredulity, the seeking of the truth, something that motivates you. That's what I was really trying to get. You know, why? You know, I was curious as a kid. This happened. I wanted to know. I wanted to understand sociology. I mean, I wanted to understand people and their hierarchy and who runs what and why they run and who. And it's supposed to be like in America, you get it's by for of the people. Pinky swear. I mean, you know. So I understand that, but it's there is a theme, a trend that we're all existing in. And a lot of people, they come to, you know, like you go with Alex Jones or David Icke or whatever, it's freaking they, them, those, and aliens, whatever the hell it is, okay? And I'm wondering, as you're going through this in the United Kingdom, and of course we have our experiences here, and I've done my thing, you know, but I'm what is it? What's the pattern that you have discerned? What is it that you see is the goal? What is happening? What are we really living in? What do all the historical, biblical, whatever stories, documents have to do as a warning to what is coming? What is it that we are up against? From your understanding, Ian, this is what, after I got, you know, the foundational, we get to know Ian at 3 years old kind of thing. Now I want to know what the hell you've learned. Now I want you to share with us what the crap is going on. Who's doing it? Why? Where's it come? What's the solution? All right, they'll give you plenty to monologue me on. You know, you go.
Well, I mean, I think that, the problem that humanity has always faced is that there are certain members of humanity that want to rule them, right? There's always some people, and they are a minority, and they've always been a minority, that want to tell other people what to do and want to rule them, usually in their own interests, because they want to exploit humanity. They want to exploit other people. They want to benefit from being in charge. You know, whether they're narcissists, egotists, sometimes psychopaths, that's who, you know, we are plagued by these people. At the same time, you know, as human beings, we're always trying to look for better ways to kind of manage and organise ourselves. So at some point, you know, we decided to go down the government route. Well, not some point, it was about 5,000 years BC, wasn't it, when the Sumerians decided that they would have a king. You know, that's when we started going down this route of having leaders that with whom we supposedly invest political authority, which you know, we can't possibly do because none of us have got it in the first place. So we can't give that which we don't have. But nonetheless, you know, we've gone down this route of putting people in charge and obeying their alleged authority.
Okay. Wait. I want to inject here. Why? You know, this is
why?
the reason. Well, the reason I do that is because, you read the Bible, and I think it's 1 Samuel or whatever, one of the kings, something. And the people, the Israelites go to God and they say, we need a king. He goes, you don't want a king. No, we really do want a king. Everybody's got a king. We want a king. No, you really don't want a king. Third time, we want a king. Okay, you asked for it. Boom. And that's when it started. And that reasoning right there, what you're just getting into, that we're looking for a leader, someone to delegate authority, somebody else do it, you take care of it. I want it done kind of this way. I get some input. I'll live under whatever, but I don't want to have to deal with a king. You got to have a king. I want to know where that comes from. Is it an instinctual herd mentality of something primal to humans, whatever? This desire to have someone to blame, to go to something. Spend a little bit of time on that for me, will you please?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's born from a genuine desire to be able to manage increasingly more complex systems. So if you think about it, if you start with farming, and that enables you to develop other technologies, because you're no longer spending all your time hunting and gathering. You've now got time to think about developing other things, art, literature, the wheel, technologies that are going to make your life better. So there are more people are drawn to your environment, and people are drawn to share that environment, and you need to try and think of some way to manage that. But at the same time, all human beings have to meet their own needs. They have to meet their own vital necessities, food, warmth and shelter. We all need to provide that for ourselves and our kids, so we need to focus on that as well. So it's quite handy if you can delegate some of that responsibility for ordering the thing that you're living in, the society that you're living in, if you delegate that to someone else. But so it's a practical necessity from that perspective. But the problem comes is that if you delegate this role to somebody else, and at the same time you say, well, okay, I'll delegate this role for you to organise something, but the only way that you're going to be able to successfully organise whatever it is we're asking you to organise is if I obey what you tell me.
I'm giving it to you!
Don't tempt me, Frodo! I dare not take it. Not even to keep it safe. Understand, Frodo. I will use this ring from a desire to do good. But through me, it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine.
But it cannot stay in the Shire!
No, it can't.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone? you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection, you can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. The aircraft crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day, killing 38 people. The Kremlin has warned against speculating over the cause of the crash while it's still being investigated. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. In his Christmas message, the US president-elect reiterated his country's claim to the waterway, which cuts through the American continent, allowing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to converge, acting as a major marine transportation route. Benji Haya reports.
In announcing his pick for ambassador to Panama, Donald Trump again insisted the Central American nation is, quote, ripping off the United States. Over the years, fees have risen to access the channel, which was built by the US back in the early 1900s and handed over to Panama 25 years ago. The president-elect wants to reassert control over the key trade artery, arguing China is expanding its influence in the channel. Panama has hit back. Its president maintains the canal's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. And neither are Greenland's. The Prime Minister of the world's biggest island has told Donald Trump that the Danish territory is not for sale either, following Trump's suggestion that he'll try to buy it for national security purposes.
Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. Most of the victims are believed to be women and children. Calling the attack cowardly, the Taliban is now vowing retaliation. Ishan Garg has more.
A Pakistani airstrike in Afghanistan's Paktika province has become the latest flashpoint between the two neighbors. Though Islamabad is yet to comment on the attack, military officials speaking to news agencies say they carried out the strike against a camp of the Pakistani Taliban, a group known as the TTP. The Taliban-led Afghan government says close to half the people killed in the strike were women and children. They claim none of the people who have died were associated with the TTP, a group seen as a terrorist organization by Islamabad. It comes just days after a Pakistani Taliban attack killed 16 Pakistani military personnel close to Paktika province along the border region. Pakistan has seen countless such attacks in the past 2 decades, and it blames the Taliban government for aiding the TTP. Taliban officials in Kabul have criticized the strikes, saying it's a blatant violation of all international principles. They are threatening retaliatory strikes against the Pakistani army, further escalating tensions between the two countries.
And finally, a family dispute at a US airport in Arizona has seen 3 people injured by gunfire and another stabbed. This is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, and this week we're casting a gaze into our 2025 crystal ball with New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent Steve Erlinger. One of the most seasoned observers globally, he's been talking to America's Council on Foreign Relations about the issues he's watching over the next 12 months. Today, Ukraine.
I think there's a lot of anxiety in Europe about what Trump wants to do, because I don't think Trump knows what he wants to do. And Ukraine is losing the war. Now, it's losing the war slowly. Everyone's trying to ensure it doesn't lose it suddenly. Mark Rutte, who's the new NATO Secretary General, and the Europeans have been meeting or are meeting to try to do 2 things. One is to figure out how to prop up Ukraine with more supplies and air defense to get into the spring when most people think negotiations might be possible, get through this horrible winter. Now, Ukraine has plenty of money now through next year, but it has a morale problem. It's losing territory. The Russians are destroying its infrastructure. You know, there's a legitimate question about whether if the war keeps going but doesn't change very much on the ground, whether there shouldn't be negotiations sooner rather than later.
Tomorrow, what's at stake for Vladimir Putin in the new year? With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Here's a recap of our top stories. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. And a family dispute at a US airport has left 3 people injured by gunfire and another person with stab wounds. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Mitch McCann in New York.
This is The Onion Week in Review. A report released this week by the Brookings Institution found that the U.S. currently has enough chairs and that there is no urgent need to produce any new ones for the time being. Researchers confirmed through overwhelming evidence that there is absolutely no shortage of chairs, citing in their findings the sheer number of armchairs, folding chairs, bar stools, Adirondack chairs, swivel chairs, lazy boys, and rocking chairs already in existence.
Our research shows that even in a place where there seems not to be enough chairs, a quick investigation will find 1 or 2 chairs just over in the next room. Basically, as far as chairs go, I'd like to reiterate that we have a very good number of them and could just use those.
And in this week's local news, the guy in front of you is ordering for an entire construction crew. In other news, a local police department reduces costs by using the same evidence for every investigation. Voters are clamoring to hear if a female political candidate is a mother first, and a whitewater rafting trip in which a friend drowned is still pretty fun.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Welcome to Declare Your Independence on the Free Talk Live Network.
It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Let us make them remember we are not
No fear here and Declare Your Independence. Me, Ernest Hancock, on the Free Talk Live Network. Our conversation with Ian Davis from the United Kingdom is continuing. We made a new friend. And, someone that is in the United Kingdom that takes on a voluntarist, anarchist, leave-me-alonist position on everything because it just all presents itself. That's the solution. Is a good find, and has been heavily recommended by a lot of the listeners. So we made the point to have a conversation, and I enjoyed it, and so will you.
And at the same time, you say, well, okay, I'll delegate this role for you to organise something, but the only way that you're going to be able to successfully organise whatever it is we're asking you to organise is if I obey what you tell me. Right now, I was in a village in Africa, right, and I was staying in one village, and some local lads broke into our hut and stole my shoes. Right, they stole my walking boots because I had decent walking
bastards.
Boots, right, so I said to the local guy, this kind of village elder where we were staying, I told him about my boots had been nicked. They made some immediate inquiries. And next thing I know, we're walking off out through the bush, going down to this next village where they'd found these kids that had nicked my boots. And I had to say, and it was actually true, that the boots, because I was quite upset about it, because my dad had given me these boots for, these were like really decent pair of hiking boots, and my dad had given them to me because he knew I was going away for a year or so. So when we got to the village, it was all sorted out, and I understood from the village that I got my boots back from, that these guys would have probably got a bit of a kick in, because they brought dishonour on the village, right? Now, it turned out that the guy that was in charge of that village, the only reason he was in charge, and I thought, well, this is a fantastic example of what I was trying to get to. The only reason that he was in charge of that village is that he built a water kind of conduit system so that his mum would have running water to her hut. Right, and everybody else in the village was very impressed by this and thought, bloody hell, that's really good. So they said to him, right, you're in charge. And he said, but I don't want to be in charge. I don't want to be in charge. And they said, we don't care whether you want to be in charge or not. We're making you in charge. You are in charge. So we will listen to your advice about things because you're obviously the smartest guy in the village. But you are in charge because we say so. Not the other way round. He's not in charge because he wanted to be in charge. He was put in charge because the people thought it would be useful if he was. Now,
leadership always rises. You know, it doesn't matter how you structure anything. It's the one that gets stuff done. It's the one that people want to go to hunting with them. You know, they go to them for advice. They go to them. Leadership, and that doesn't matter what kind of system you got and how who got elected and whatever. Leadership is leadership. That's just, you know, recognized, and that's the way it happens. And it's usually based on an ethic. You know, someone you want your children to emulate. You know, that kind of thing. So that's one thing I wanted to get to. The fact that you embraced voluntarism, anarchy, you know, whatever you want to call it. Why? You know, where did that come from? How'd you go? I'm an anarchist. Get over it. Okay. So when that happened, how? What was the definition you used? What was the transition?
Well, I think it was. So always, it's been kind of based on reading, really, and reading what. I mean, I've always enjoyed that's a big key to why I am probably interested in this stuff now, and why I'm writing is because I've always enjoyed reading. Yeah. So it's because I enjoy reading. You know, I like words, and I enjoy the ideas that they convey. So, you know, I mean, I guess I probably read probably the first book I read that made me think about kind of voluntarist kind of principles was probably Most Dangerous Superstition, Larkin Rose.
Yeah.
Reading that, I just thought that made sense. You know, I just thought this is something that makes sense to me based on my life experience and based on the things that I've seen in my working life and seen in my personal life. That what he's explaining here makes sense. So then I, you know, started reading a bit more wide, you know, Proudhon and people like that, and just trying to get a bit more kind of sense of the kind of stateless mindset, where the way of thinking about things, and you know, so consequently, and I think I'm someone that, and another why question is, the thing that makes me, that floats my boat, I suppose you could say, is logic. I like clean logic, tidy logic. Now, I would have to say that the arguments for a stateless society is the most logical argument that I'm political in terms of any socio-political model. It's the most logical one, and that's why I guess that I became increasingly interested in it, and that's why I've ended up advocating it to the extent that I do. But I advocate it because I because I think it could be immensely beneficial for people if they were more familiar with its kind of concepts. That's why. I mean, it's not.
Well,
because
the most dangerous superstition. Larkin and I are good friends, and he's here in Arizona. As a matter of fact, and his uncompromising embracing of anarchy. You go, yeah, but what about nope, none. Okay, and he'll argue all the because everybody's always trying to find a crack they can put a wedge in. Yeah, but the state could, and then they widened it and add in more crap. Larkin is, he's got a hard shell. Yep, there's no cracks here, man. Freaking the state sucks. That's just the way the most dangerous superstition. But that wasn't really that long ago. God, was that 5-6 years ago? 7. So that is, brings you up to relatively recently that you've been advocating for stateless solutions. And that's why we're doing the Occupy the Land thing. Our big thing is communication. We have a site called pirateswithoutborders.com, and it's really the letters of Captain Mark, and his first mate Reprisal, Mark and Reprisal, that kind of thing. And what we have, those letters are like a dozen letters on various different issues of a stateless solution. And the reason we did it is because I could see what was coming. Decentralization. The ability to communicate, which is always number one thing. The ability to communicate is without restriction is going to bring about a whole bunch of this other stuff. Advances in, propulsion, energy, transportation, shelter, food, health, education, automation. I mean, it's just, here we go. Well, decentralization, I go, you guys watch. This decentralization, I call it quantum, welcome to my quantum reality. As soon as I start taking steps towards something and we start pushing it, all of a sudden it's ubiquitous. Well, how did you know? How did you not know? This is just, it's like the ether, it's the 100th monkey or something. Do you put in some effort on this, then you start seeing it everywhere. So I'm going, okay, what I want is I want to be able to make sure if I was in my 20s and I read Most Dangerous Superstition, I read your pseudoscience, I read, something, I get experience to your podcast, your Substack, and I start to get this, I'm in charge of me thing. How do I do that? Well, you just do it. But I mean, it's is there a place? Is there a thing? When what's his name? World Economic Forum. I'm kind of glad I forgot his name. Yeah, Schwab. Klaus Schwab comes out and he goes, "You'll own nothing, and here's your happy shot." I knew that's exactly what they meant. They don't want you self-sustaining. They don't want you educating your own children. They don't want you growing your own food, taking care of your own water, making sure your shelter's not too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, too whatever. You can do that. That you can have a nice nest for a pretty little birdie that want to come live with you and you take care of their security and safety. You're done. You're done. That's it. You raise families, you go on. Society takes care of itself in your area. But everybody wants to come in. Oh, you need me to take care of it because you got some bad neighbor or a bad foreigner or we got something bad, and you need me to have an F-16 to take care of you. And if you get out of line, I'm going to use that F-16, kick your ass. So this is, hell, even Biden threatened it. Oh, yeah, you think I got F-16s. Oh, you son of a bitch. And you're a classic. So this is kind of where my mindset is. And I can see the anarchist stripe kind of going in. So we do, since the summer that Trump went down the escalator, 15, a good friend of mine's a doctor here in the Valley in Arizona, and he goes, now don't be a hater, but I want to do the Trump report every week on your show. I can say, you're still voting? Bunch of times. Bring it, okay? Let's do it. So it's just, odd couple, he and I arguing like a married couple all the time, and I'm sure you dig it. But, the thing is that it was his understanding, because his family was in the steel high-rise construction business or whatever, so they kind of knew he reads Art of the Deal. He goes, people don't understand. He's going to win. They don't understand what's going on. The media is going to poo-poo him. They're going to attack him, whatever. But he's going to. And then the respect I give, even though, nobody in charge. Oh, you're my president? Mine? Really? I don't care, But the thing is that boy works hard. His why is motivating him, whatever it's ego, it's, say, America, whatever the heck it is. The boy is a hard worker, okay? A lot of things are coming out. With RFK Jr. going over really, kind of opened up a lot of things. Tulsi, Elon, Vivek, a lot of these guys we've been following for this time for other reasons. The fact that they come to do this next administration after he knows what's up, this was my concern. And I just want to make sure I made this very clear early on. I'm afraid that if Trump wins the first time, 16, now after the Levolution with Ron Paul, I don't know if you know, I'm the one that created the Ron Paul Levolution logo. We went around the country doing whatever, and they go, how did you know? I go, how did you not know? I remember it was, January we found out he was willing to do it in 07. I go, watch this. What? Just watch this. Boom! And the reason was the confidence in the freedom message. Freedom's the answer, what's the question? And Ron Paul was really great at that, and it brought together a lot of energy, and you could see that the people really can be in charge. When Trump did his campaign, and he wins, I think it surprised him too. When he gets in, one, he had to learn, how it really worked, and now he's going into this now. But my biggest fear was, I go, this is what I'm afraid of. People are going to think the system works. They're going to go, see? Trump got, see? The game works, see? Eventually, see? Yeah. And I'm going, no, it doesn't. This is how bad it is. So when people get to see how bad it is, whatever it is, that was one thing going in. It was the end of 19. We're doing our predictions that we'll be doing the next show, James Corbett and I do, going at early 20. This is before the lockdown, before the corona was like a big thing and so on. I'm going, James, is 2020 it? Is that the year? And he goes, for what? It? And he goes, yep. So we were sitting there talking about, yep, in 2020, whatever's going to happen. And it happened. I mean, on steroids. Here we go. I knew they were going to do so. That's why we did the Love Bus Liberty tour and out opposing mandates and, masks and all that kind of stuff. And our sign over a sign. But we traveled the country in the rural areas back and forth and got a real sense of what's really going on, which is why I came to the realization these people are not being represented. They're not the ones with the shows. They're not the ones with the Substack. They're not the ones that are living the life that the guys in the city have imposed upon them and are strangling food production intentionally, unhealthy, make you sick. Here's a pill. This is not sustainable. So, what is? And when will it be? So now I'm in the situation to where I'm going, what we have now with the re-election of Trump, there is a sense of, there's a euphoria. There's a, we're going to fix it. It's going to be, well, he hasn't even got seated yet. We're going to see, if he makes it, okay? But I think it's not him. It's us. It's the people. They have a higher expectation now, and they're going to insist on it working. So what do you think? Is it going to work? Are we going to have something that's going to, benefit humanity? Or is it going to be just enough of a positive feeling and example to screw us up for another 20 years? You see my point?
Yeah, I do. Well, no, it's not going to work in my view. Well, it depends what you mean by work.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it this way, right? So let's take a good example is digital ID, right? So digital ID, it's fairly easy to sell that idea to the kind of left-leaning kind of Democrat voter who thinks that it's a good way to enable us to ration energy so that we can save the planet. right? So it's you know, appealing to their sense of sustainability and sustainable development. You can say, well, you know, we need digital ID. I'm just using this as an example. We need digital ID because you know, that will enable us to ensure that we're all using energy efficiently. You know, it's an important thing. Well, that'll be tied to your smart meter, and won't that be great? Now, you know, the kind of I guess the more left-leaning kind of Democrat voter might think, yeah, that's all right, but that's a harder sell to the kind of Rust Belt American worker who is kind of more libertarian-minded and isn't so impressed by the idea of the state decreeing where they can go or how much energy they can use. Right? They're not up for that idea at all. What they need is someone who they think represents their interests and represents their kind of view of the world, who can introduce digital ID for another reason, controlling immigration. Controlling immigration, for example. So what you end up with on both the left and the right of the political spectrum is digital ID, but for different reasons. So when Trump stands up and says,
"We're voting, gotta have elections, integrity, gotta get a vote ID."
So when Trump says that there won't be CBDC, which he said, you know, because everybody understands that CBDC is a terrible idea, but he's aligned himself with people like Peter Thiel and people like that are hell-bent on introducing things like digital currency, which will be programmable and will be CBDC in all but name. You're still going to get it, but it'll be called something else. It'll be called Jamie Dimon Supercoin or something like that, right? So
GoldmanSucks.gov coin.
Goldman Sachs stable coin of the universe, whatever, right? So you're still gonna get it. You're still gonna get the same thing that you would have got whether or not Trump was in charge. Although I would really challenge the notion that any president or prime minister is in charge, because I don't think that they are. So I think they're just puppets myself. I'm just figureheads for people to rally behind, so that they can pointlessly throw their energies into waving flags for no apparent reason. That's what I think that's all about. So you know, and you know, the things that people. That said, going back to your point about what this embodies. So is there some aspect of that desire for a smaller government and a more kind of laissez-faire approach to governance that is valuable?
Well, what's the most education? Right there, what would you suggest people read or understand? You know, I was science fiction. I was Hogan and Heinlein and so on. That's where I got, you know, the possibilities. You know, where do you think they should go?
What in terms of thinking about the possibilities? Read Jeremy Locke. Read Jeremy Locke's The End of All Evil. Read that.
End of All Evil. I'll have Donna put it in the archive.
Jeremy Locke's The End of All Evil. Then I would suggest maybe not. No, don't read that first. Don't read that first. Read Brzezinski's The Grand Chessboard.
Okay, start over. Brzezinski.
Brzezinski's The Grand Chessboard, to understand how the people on this, that there are people on this earth who think in terms of nation states as things to be manipulated, that plan decades in advance.
That system is our enemy. When you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
Anyone can publish on the internet, but not everyone is publishing material suited for online reading. According to the Yahoo Style Guide, it cautions that internet content has a few seconds, 3 or less, to encourage people to read more, to take action, or navigate to another one of your pages. So make it easy for readers to pick and choose. Isn't that the way you poke around online? Use short words, short sentences, short paragraphs, bulleted lists, and short pages. Front load what you write, putting the most important information at the beginning of headlines and paragraphs and sentences. Same goes for your keywords, what someone would likely type into the search box on Yahoo or Google. For more tips on communicating better online or in a job interview or everyday life, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. The aircraft crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day, killing 38 people. The Kremlin has warned against speculating over the cause of the crash while it's still being investigated. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. In his Christmas message, the US president-elect reiterated his country's claim to the waterway, which cuts through the American continent, allowing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to converge, acting as a major marine transportation route. Benji Haya reports.
In announcing his pick for ambassador to Panama, Donald Trump again insisted the Central American nation is, quote, ripping off the United States. Over the years, fees have risen to access the channel, which was built by the US back in the early 1900s and handed over to Panama 25 years ago. The president-elect wants to reassert control over the key trade artery, arguing China is expanding its influence in the channel. Panama has hit back. Its president maintains the canal's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. And neither are Greenland's. The Prime Minister of the world's biggest island has told Donald Trump that the Danish territory is not for sale either, following Trump's suggestion that he'll try to buy it for national security purposes.
Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. Most of the victims are believed to be women and children. Calling the attack cowardly, the Taliban is now vowing retaliation. Ishan Garg has more.
A Pakistani airstrike in Afghanistan's Paktika province has become the latest flashpoint between the two neighbors. Though Islamabad is yet to comment on the attack, military officials speaking to news agencies say they carried out the strike against a camp of the Pakistani Taliban, a group known as the TTP. The Taliban-led Afghan government says close to half the people killed in the strike were women and children. They claim none of the people who have died were associated with the TTP, a group seen as a terrorist organization by Islamabad. It comes just days after a Pakistani Taliban attack killed 16 Pakistani military personnel close to Paktika province along the border region. Pakistan has seen countless such attacks in the past 2 decades, and it blames the Taliban government for aiding the TTP. Taliban officials in Kabul have criticized the strikes, saying it's a blatant violation of all international principles. They are threatening retaliatory strikes against the Pakistani army, further escalating tensions between the two countries.
And finally, a family dispute at a US airport in Arizona has seen 3 people injured by gunfire and another stabbed. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Roads? It's the Ernest Hancock Show. Where we're going, there aren't any roads.
Welcome back to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, on the Free Talk Live Network. Our guest this evening is Ian Davis, IAIN Davis.com. Now, he's a United Kingdom blogger, journalist, and, mature guy that knows what's up. And he's published all over the place. Other independent media outlets, such as Unlimited Hangout, Geopolitics and Empire, Bitcoin Magazine. He's been published on Off Guardian, Lou Rockwell, Technocracy News and Trends, and the Corbett Report. So this is audience members that encouraged us to reach out to Ian, and they contacted him for us to do this show, and I really enjoyed it. And you need these perspectives from around the world and what is being experienced by people in the United Kingdom, Europe, everywhere. It definitely rhymes with what's going on here. Let's have a listen and see what we all have in common.
On this, that there are people on this earth who think in terms of nation states as things to be manipulated, that plan decades in advance.
Right.
So read that to grasp that. Then read, I would suggest, Adam Labor's the book he wrote on the Bank for International Settlements. The name escapes me.
I'll look it up. Adam Labor's. Okay.
It'll come to me later. And then read Jeremy Locke's End of All Evil.
End of All Evil.
Because you know that will take you from having an appreciation of the nature of the way some people think, and also in terms of Brzezinski's book, The Grand Chessboard, will give you an insight into the way people think, but it will also give you a glimpse of the world of people with the assumed authority to actually make that stuff happen.
You deserve to be ruled because you're letting us rule you, so we're ruling you. Get over it.
Yeah.
You know?
Then if you read the history of the Bank for International Settlements, I can't remember the name of the bloody... if you read that, then you'll have a reasonable idea about what those kinds of movers and shakers behind the scenes are really interested in. And it is about the global manipulation of populations through markets. So you know, the history of the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank of all central banks, is unbelievable. It started as a pretty much a criminal enterprise, and has continued as such. But it is the most powerful financial institution on the planet. More so, I would say, than the IMF or the World Bank or anything like that. So, in fact, far more so, because things like special drawing rights and stuff like that wouldn't work without the Bank for International Settlements. And everything then you get things like, what have the Bank for International Settlements been working on as the whole world has been focused on the conflicts that it's having? Well, it's been working on interoperability. Yeah, that's it. Tower of Babel. That's it. Tower of Babel. Brilliant. And it's been working on something called interoperability. So, for example, in its Hong Kong branch, using something called the M-Bridge, which it will make near instantaneous transactions in any currency possible, digital currency, I might add, cross-border digital currencies, transactions, that it's been working on with the Chinese central bank. But also it works, its other member banks include the Federal Reserve, which has also been working on interoperability. The Federal Reserve has got its project, I've forgotten the name of the project now, but it's exactly the same. So you've got this link between all central banks that are working on this idea of having nearly instantaneous cross-border settlement in any digital currency. And I think, there's a... and I think, so if Trump says, we won't have CBDC, fine. But if you've got a privately issued stable coin that is interoperable globally with any other currency, including, say, for example, the digital ruble, and it's nearly instantaneously transferable in real time, probably I think that's going to be on a wholesale CBDC layer, which is, what we might call reserve currency. But I think
tied to your social credit score of they, them, those.
Yeah, and that'll be so you're onboarding. How are you going to get your Jamie Dimon Supercoin or whatever it's going to be, right? How are you going to get it? Well, you'll need digital ID to secure your wallet. So your digital ID will be tied to your programmable money. Now, the point is, all of this is being rolled out everywhere simultaneously. Sustainable development goals are being pursued. Different countries have got a different slant on it, but they're all basically pursuing the same model, which I would argue is technocracy. Digital ID, programmable currency, mRNA jabs, the poly crisis, needing to respond to poly crisis, the control of social media, anti-disinformation legislation, controlling what people say and think and do. This is all being rolled out simultaneously, globally. No matter where you look, it's all happening now at the same time. Now, sorry, but if electing Trump is not going to make any difference to that. That's not going to stop that. It's because Trump doesn't have a lot of say in the matter. So it's not something that you can vote your way out of. Now, going back to what you did say about this sense of hope and this sense of
hopium.
Yeah, but could that? But I think I mean, one of the things that I'm really wary of is this whole notion of being awake and knowing something that other people don't know, and because you sound like an arrogant fool if you start speaking in those terms. We're all on a continuum, and we're all on a pathway through our own lives and through the knowledge that we acquire throughout our lives, and we all know things that other people don't know, and I'm acutely aware that there is a vast sea of knowledge out there that I know nothing about, right? And I'm totally reliant on other people telling me about it. So the fact that I think I know something is neither here nor there, because I know nothing in the great scheme of things, and but the point is, neither does anybody else. So we can't go around sort of preaching to other people saying, oh, well, you don't realise this and you don't realise that. Maybe they don't, but that doesn't mean that they're incapable of realising it, and that doesn't mean that they won't realise it if they're given the opportunity to learn more about what's going on around them. So it's beholding on people like me that happens to focus on this kind of information to try and put it out there. Just float it out, which is really my motivation for doing what I'm doing, is to try and just put the information out there and hope that people will use it for their benefit. That's all. That's really what I'm doing.
Okay, this is brings us to we can discuss some news, some issues, and you brought up Brzezinski. Zbigniew Brzezinski was a Columbia professor that wrote Between Two Ages, America's Role in the New Technotronic Era, back in like 70 or so. Well, Rockefellers and Bilderberg and they, them, those, and whatever, and then from that came the Trilateral Commission and all this, we're going to rule the planet thing. Then when you get Klaus Schwab coming up and saying, you'll own nothing, here's your happy shot. Well, this is what he was basing on. It was, we're going to take it, you're going to be happy after we get everything, and you have this enormous transfer of wealth from the boomers here in America to Generation Next, and they're like, whoa, can't let people have, that's our money because we can't pass a law. So you look at that, and then you look at United Kingdom, and you have Parliament, the government, the Crown, whatever, they're going, this transfer of all this farmland, all these traditional, these homes, these farms, these big ranches, whatever, we're going to redistribute that to different, we're going to take and read, and you're not allowed, and kids, and put the taxes up, and then here come the tractors, okay? So tell us about that. How is that being perceived in the UK, where they start coming out, exactly what you're talking about, is that, we're in charge, and all that you've accumulated in this generation, that's way too much power and control and self-sufficiency in the hands of the people, so we're going to take it. Talk about that issue.
I mean, we don't have the space that a lot of places in America have got. Okay, for a start, I mean, we're squeezed into a small geographical area. There's best part of 70 million of us living in somewhere that's about the size of Texas. So we, not even that big. So we don't have the space, and we don't have vast stretches of land where people can roam relatively freely. Everything is more tightly controlled, and in the UK. Now, we also have this acute awareness of class, right? And this kind of this resentment of anything that we consider to be unfair. So one of the most remarkable things about the government's idea. So the UK government is proposing to put inheritance tax on farmers' holdings of over the total value of the estate is over 1 million, and this would be on a sliding scale going up. So you wouldn't necessarily get taxed very much if the land was worth 1 million, because what farm isn't at least worth that. But you might get taxed more on a progressive scale going up to 6 million, 7 million, and at 6 million it becomes 40% and more, right? So I think it's 6 million. I think, but the point is, as farmers point out, is that sure, the value of the land might be that, because land is incredibly expensive in the UK. So it's easy to have it doesn't even need to be, certainly not in US terms. We're not talking about farms that are anywhere near the size of the kind of mega farms and ranches that you have out in the US. But a large farm in the UK, it's very easy for that land to be easily worth more than 6 million quid, right? Pounds. But that doesn't mean the farmer is earning a fortune from farming it. The margins on farming are very tight, especially on things like milk production and on and on dairy farming generally, and on even on agricultural, wheat and things like that. They're not, growing the food that we need. And
any government action they can take and make it worthless. You gotta kill all your chickens. Avian bird flu. Oh, no, there's a bad milk in the whatever, and you can't have raw, and you gotta, take out, and cows are farting, and what. I mean, they are going after the food supply, and certainly the self-sufficiency of the small farmer.
Yeah, and this is the point. So the family farmers, they don't make enough profit to pay that amount of inheritance tax, right? So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to sell their land, and who's going to buy that land?
BlackRock.
Well, it'll be big, it'll be big agricultural corporations will buy it. They'll probably, people selling off land to put windmills and sun solar panels on them and stuff like that. But that means that land's not being used to produce food. And we're only 50, I think in the UK we're something like 50%, even less self-sufficient in food. So we import most of our food already. So, I mean, it's just, it's not good. But this is, going back to how things are managed. So because in the UK we have this kind of sense of, we sort of bridle against anything that we deem to be unfair, and we have this kind of fairly rigid kind of cultural appreciation of class. We think, rich landed farmers are like landed gentry, right? So why shouldn't they be taxed? Why shouldn't they? Everybody else is taxed. Why shouldn't they be taxed? That argument has been quite put forward quite successfully, and a lot of people on the left, who are usually kind of middle class champagne socialist glitterati, they are all promoting this idea. Oh yes, it's only fair that everybody is taxed fairly. Is it? Well, why should anybody be taxed? Well, nobody kind of puts forward that argument. Well, okay, well, rather than tax everybody fairly, why don't you just not tax anybody? You know, I mean, that's, and the assumption is with that argument, and certainly coming from the kind of left in the UK, is that you know, that taxation's good. You know, it's good, isn't it, to give all our money to. At the same time, we've got a government in power who got 17.5% of the vote and has got a massive majority. More than 82% of the British electorate didn't vote for the government. They didn't vote for them. And yet we've got a party in power, the Labour Party under Keir Starmer, that's got a massive parliamentary majority. The Labour Party can do whatever they like. Now, they've already taken away winter fuel subsidies from pensioners. They've already spoken about cutting things like, you know, like pensions and freezing pensions, and so well, literally freezing pensioners. They've already spoken about that, and at the same time have committed £3 billion in arms aid, arms assistance to Ukraine, to perpetuate an ongoing war which doesn't seem to have any resolution, and well, you know, doesn't seem to serve any kind of useful purpose for anybody in Ukraine, and certainly not in Russia or in the Donbass anymore. We've always got money to pay for killing people in foreign fields. Governments don't have enough money to support pensioners in the UK and stop them freezing to death. We've already had a guy, it was all splashed all over the papers today, and an elderly gentleman, I think he wasn't that old, he was only about 76 or something like that, who's died in his flat, has been found in his flat dead because he froze to death in the UK, because it was a choice for him between eating and putting his heating on. And we allow this to persist. I don't know why people allow it to persist, but they do. And at the same time, you know, and then you get people who will complain about the fact that the government are doing things like that, and then you know, and then doing other things like sending money to foreign war zones in military assistance. People never seem to put things together, that it's never seemed to arrive at the point of realization that it is only them that can do something about it. Nobody else can do anything about it.
For their
only
lives.
them.
Yep.
So it's their responsibility to stop it. It's not, and that's the problem with government, of course, is that we devolve that responsibility to others, and you know, increasingly it's becoming apparent that that's a very, very dangerous thing to do, because
this is one thing I want to get your comment on. Are you being an inspiration in that area? Are you know, more self-sufficient? Do you got like a garden on your patio? What is it that you're advocating that the individuals do, or are you just commentating from the apartment? And where do you live in the UK?
I live on the south coast, in a place called Havant, in Portsmouth. That's where I'm sort of based, but I'm not there at the moment. I'm in Devon at the moment, which is a bit further away.
So, is there something you advocate for people to actually do to decentralize themselves?
Yeah, energy independence. Be as independent as possible. So be as energy independent as possible. Something else we've seen is people recently, the government moving to ban wood burning stoves in people's houses, because of course that's us, you know, collecting wood and using that in your own wood burner is a source of potential energy independence. And I know people that have got wood burners that they heat their whole home with. Right. So you know, off grid. So, you know, I mean, I kind of live in a community of people that live off grid. I'm among them. In the UK, it is not advisable to be living without an address. There are problems that come with that. So I, of course, have got an address and I've got a home that I live in, but I just happen to also occasionally roam around the country in a vehicle. So I do that as well. When I do that, I am off grid, and I live off grid when I do that. But, you know, obviously I don't do that all the time, because that would mean that I wouldn't have a domicile, and that wouldn't be fair and right in the UK, so I don't do that. But I am aware that there are other people that do the same sort of thing. So there are other people living off grid who don't pay so much in tax as other people do. You still have to pay tax, you still have to live by the law of the land, of course, but don't necessarily go and buy all their food in supermarkets, who are aware of where the farmers' markets are, and have got a network of knowing where they can get food without going to the supermarket, and who are doing everything they possibly can to maximise their independence from the state and minimise their contribution to the state. So
stop supporting the beast that's devouring you.
Yeah, I'm not supporting the beast that's devouring you, and I would heartily recommend that people, and I try to suggest that people do that. Now, one of the things that I've practiced, because I was a counsellor as well, I was a qualified counsellor, that I certainly when I was working with people that have got substance misuse issues, we used an approach called acceptance and commitment therapy. So acceptance and commitment therapy is a behavioural change technique by which you are aware of your behaviours and the behaviours that are leading you either away or towards something that's important to you. And these can be the very little things, very little things, like putting your shoes on and walking out the door and going to the off licence to buy a drink, which are off licences in the UK are places that sell alcohol. So putting your shoes on is one of those behaviours. That's part of the chain of behaviours that leads you to go out and buy a drink. So if you don't put your shoes on, you don't walk out the door, you don't go and buy a drink, which might be leading you towards something that's more important than drinking, which might be like caring for your pet or looking after your loved one, or rebuilding your relationships that you might have damaged because of your substance dependence. So by doing that, using acceptance and commitment therapy and breaking down our behaviours into its constituent little bits, and by focusing on those behaviours and taking control of our behaviours, we can move towards something that's important to us. So something that's important to me is freedom from oppression. I don't want to live in a state that oppresses me.
Freedom's the answer. What's the question?
So the question is, who's in control?
If you go in without the fear mechanism, which is what they play on all the time, and that's where I want to go now, is we've got to know Ian Davis. We've made a new friend. We've made sure that we kind of get where he's coming from and his experiences. So now is where everybody always starts. So in the last half hour or more, until we're done, because I want to keep it to 2 hours and 10 minutes, and we're at an hour 30, because that way, tomorrow we're on a network, like 170, 200 stations, whatever. And I want to, edit this show for that, so that we can introduce you to Merca. Okay. So the thing is that now I want to get into all the freaking stories that are, it's all, and that's one thing. Corbett and I, for years, we go like this. I'm like, well, they haven't brought in the aliens yet. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel when the aliens come out,
Free Talk Live.
Having spent 8 years, 6 months, and 21 days of my life in the Florida State prison system, I'm going to say that the incidences of rape are much, much exaggerated in the media. I'm sure it happened.
It makes for interesting television shows.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that I've seen on Oz, I saw in prison, but I was there for 9 years. So, if I saw one incidence of violence where somebody got their ear bit off, okay, it didn't happen every episode.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it is a public perception, though, and people, it's almost a joke, or it's like a wink and a nod.
Yeah, sure.
Bubba's going to get you when you go to prison.
That's exactly the idea. As though sodomy somehow fixes people's broken minds. Right. That's not where they're putting that thing. So I mean, it's not gonna jostle anything around and fix it.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. The aircraft crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day, killing 38 people. The Kremlin has warned against speculating over the cause of the crash while it's still being investigated. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. In his Christmas message, the US president-elect reiterated his country's claim to the waterway, which cuts through the American continent, allowing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to converge, acting as a major marine transportation route. Benji Haya reports.
In announcing his pick for ambassador to Panama, Donald Trump again insisted the Central American nation is, quote, ripping off the United States. Over the years, fees have risen to access the channel, which was built by the US back in the early 1900s and handed over to Panama 25 years ago. The president-elect wants to reassert control over the key trade artery, arguing China is expanding its influence in the channel. Panama has hit back. Its president maintains the canal's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. And neither are Greenland's. The Prime Minister of the world's biggest island has told Donald Trump that the Danish territory is not for sale either, following Trump's suggestion that he'll try to buy it for national security purposes.
Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. Most of the victims are believed to be women and children. Calling the attack cowardly, the Taliban is now vowing retaliation. Ishan Garg has more.
A Pakistani airstrike in Afghanistan's Paktika province has become the latest flashpoint between the two neighbors. Though Islamabad is yet to comment on the attack, military officials speaking to news agencies say they carried out the strike against a camp of the Pakistani Taliban, a group known as the TTP. The Taliban-led Afghan government says close to half the people killed in the strike were women and children. They claim none of the people who have died were associated with the TTP, a group seen as a terrorist organization by Islamabad. It comes just days after a Pakistani Taliban attack killed 16 Pakistani military personnel close to Paktika province along the border region. Pakistan has seen countless such attacks in the past 2 decades, and it blames the Taliban government for aiding the TTP. Taliban officials in Kabul have criticized the strikes, saying it's a blatant violation of all international principles. They are threatening retaliatory strikes against the Pakistani army, further escalating tensions between the two countries.
And finally, a family dispute at a US airport in Arizona has seen 3 people injured by gunfire and another stabbed. This is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, and this week we're casting a gaze into our 2025 crystal ball with New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent Steve Erlinger. One of the most seasoned observers globally, he's been talking to America's Council on Foreign Relations about the issues he's watching over the next 12 months. Today, Ukraine.
I think there's a lot of anxiety in Europe about what Trump wants to do, because I don't think Trump knows what he wants to do. And Ukraine is losing the war. Now, it's losing the war slowly. Everyone's trying to ensure it doesn't lose it suddenly. Mark Rutte, who's the new NATO Secretary General, and the Europeans have been meeting or are meeting to try to do two things. One is to figure out how to prop up Ukraine with more supplies and air defense to get into the spring when most people think negotiations might be possible, get through this horrible winter. Now, Ukraine has plenty of money now through next year, but it has a morale problem. It's losing territory. The Russians are destroying its infrastructure. You know, there's a legitimate question about whether, if the war keeps going but doesn't change very much on the ground, whether there shouldn't be negotiations sooner rather than later.
Tomorrow, what's at stake for Vladimir Putin in the new year? With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Here's a recap of our top stories. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. And a family dispute at a US airport has left 3 people injured by gunfire and another person with stab wounds. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Mitch McCann in New York.
Officials for the Centers for Disease Contraction and Preservation held a press conference urging all Americans to suck on as many doorknobs as possible.
This flu season, the Center for Disease Contraction is recommending that all Americans, regardless of age or health condition, find a doorknob in a high-traffic area, wrap their mouths around it, and vigorously lick and suck it until they contract an illness. We recommend sucking doorknobs covered in a visible film of human hand grease. But the fact is, sucking on any doorknob can increase the likelihood of exposing yourself and your family to deadly pathogens by as much as 450%.
An instructional video released on the CDC's website showcases the proper method for sucking doorknobs while also providing tips for projecting all sneezes and coughs outward, sharing used Kleenexes and toilet paper with as many people as possible, eating 3 meals a day from local garbage cans, and dozens of other easy bacteria-spreading activities.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Welcome to Declare Your Independence on the Free Talk Live Network.
It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Let us make them remember we are not
afraid! No fear here and Declare Your Independence. Me, Ernest Hancock on the Free Talk Live Network. Our conversation with Ian Davis from the United Kingdom is continuing. We made a new friend. And, someone that is in the United Kingdom that takes on a voluntarist, anarchist, leave-me-alonist position on everything because it just all presents itself. That's the solution. Is a good find, and has been heavily recommended by a lot of the listeners. So we made the point to have a conversation, and I enjoyed it, and so will you. I want to get into all the freaking stories that are, it's all, and that's one thing. Corbett and I, for years, we go like this. I'm like, well, they haven't brought in the aliens yet. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel when the aliens come out, So it's going to, here we go. Now, whether there is or not, they got that on the shelf, whatever it is, they prepped it. They got Project Bluebeam. They're going to holograph. It's going to be made of drones. It's going to be whatever the hell they're going to do. They're not going to let that nice little arrow in their quiver go unused. I mean, they got to, take care of business. So here we're going into this, whatever is next. The world might break out in peace. I mean, oh my God, we can't have that, So this is, I want to get into some of the news items that's happening now and the psyop-y, the condition, everything. Yeah. Because keep in mind, it's going to be food. That's, one of the first, and definitely communication, your health. It's going to be, your money. It's going to be, your transportation, how they can regulate and control that, education of your kids, automation, robots, AI, going to be all these things that I am just, I really am concerned that humanity is going to miss this opportunity of being able to discern what's really going on. Now, let me go ahead and show you here. I just, so you can get an idea. Pirates Without Borders was really just us making sure that you understand that all of the communication, energy, shelter, food, water, health, transportation, automation, education, these issues, and then you go into the letters of Captain Mark, and you got, all the, we're going to share whatever with you. And it is so important to me that people understand what we're up against. And I want you to share some of the stories that are coming out now that are meant to confuse us, to get us on board with whatever their narrative or agenda is. And I feel it as vectors from everywhere to do what? To keep us on the plantation, to make us afraid, to delegate more authority, and I want to bring this up. I made notes when you were talking about Brzezinski. What a lot of people don't know, I didn't know until just a couple years ago, it's Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough and his wife, Mika, they are husband and wife pair on MSNBC doing whatever. After the election, they go to Mar-a-Lago after they've been criticizing Trump, and they went and kissed a ring or something. They knew they were done. So they go, and Mika is Brzezinski's daughter. I did not know that. I'm like, holy crap. So Brzezinski, after he wrote the book, the Rockefellers there think that's all great and wonderful. They create this trilateral commission to where cabinet position ever since the Carter administration, and Brzezinski went in, was secretary of something, and I think state maybe, but he goes into the administration. Well, they had now all of these trilateral commission guys, and you conspiracy nut, I can't believe. And then when they hit their 40th anniversary, they're proud of it. Yes, and thanks to the media for letting us get away with it and whatever. And here's our 40th anniversary picture on our webpage of whatever. And I guess it's not so conspiracy anymore. So this is amazing that this has been happening right in front of us. The media has been a part of it. The capture of everything. So now that we get into this Trump era, we got Mika, his daughter, after he passed away, is just recently, she's, advocating for whatever the hell it is they're advocating. Well, they'll go into their cocoon, they'll go into their crypt, they'll go into their, vampire coffin and wait until whenever and spring it on us some more. So I'm wanting to know, what are some of the issues out there that these guys have planned, wrote about, detailed, but they weren't really writing to the people. They were writing to their peeps. They were writing to their support. They were writing, this is how we're going to rule the cattle. And we're going to pass this and do that, undo this. So what are some of the stories? Now, a lot of the things, of course, are UK-centric that you focused on. But let's try and go a little bit broader, 30,000 feet thing. What are some of the things that we're seeing now that you think Americans should be afraid of, concerned with, ignore, I mean, what is it that you think is in the news now that we should be concerned about?
I think it's always very important to be aware of the strategy of tension and know what that is. So the strategy of tension was something that underpinned was the theory that underpinned a 40-year-long false flag operation campaign that was waged in Europe and the West called Operation Gladio. So the idea of the idea of the strategy of tension is to convince the population that they face some sort of threat, and thereby encourage the population to seek out the protection of the state, and thereby encourage the population to agree with whatever demands that the state says, or hoops that the state says they have to jump through in order to stay safe. So that is the strategy of tension that was used during Gladio, and it's never not been used. We saw it during COVID. We see it being used all the time. It is a favoured technique of our would-be overlords. So when we're looking at things like global conflict, so we're looking at what's happened in Syria at the moment and the extent to which that has been exploited, and we've got British politicians going over to Syria to hold official delegation meetings with terrorists. Al-Jilani, head of Hayat al-Sham.
Yeah, but they're going to take them off the terrorist watch list, so it's okay.
Yeah, but this is the important thing. They're going to take HTS off the terrorist watch list to legitimize them. So HTS is Al-Qaeda, right? Who are the people that are supposed to have supposedly behind 9/11. So this is supposedly. So this is the US has been funding, the US taxpayer has been funding a decade-long war on terror against an enemy that is now being supported by the US government to run a country in the Middle East for the benefit of Israel, which the US taxpayer also funds to an incredible amount of billions and billions of dollars every year, and that whole expansionist war, which is obviously where it's heading, is for the benefit of multinational arms manufacturing corporations, who are the only people that are going to make any money and are going to benefit from it. And it's all being done at the expense of the human lives lost in the Middle East, and
gazillions.
And you could look also at Europe, the destabilization of Europe. Let's also not forget that senior Russian officials are also talking about making HTS, taking them off the terrorist list. So they're on board with it as well. So this is, I would suggest to people that war is probably, the sharpest point of pressure that is applied whenever governments are seeking to use the strategy of tension to get you to fall in line with whatever draconian diktats they want to impose on you. So, for example, more paying, hiking the tax take, for example, saying, we have to do this because it's necessary to protect our interests overseas.
Be afeared, be afeared, be afeared.
Be afraid, be afraid. So,
well, this is one thing that. Well, go ahead and finish your thought. I want to inject something.
So another thing we've seen, another story that is worth looking at and keeping an eye on, is the immigration issue, and how immigration causes tremendous fear and social disruption. That is happening in the US with people with obviously with the concerns about the people that are coming over the Mexican border. It's happening in the Europe with people coming from war zones, basically in the Middle East, coming into Europe that way. It's happening. You're seeing people resettled in Ireland. Obviously, Ireland's part of the EU. It's not part of the UK, but in Ireland, they're building camps and putting people in camps. Thousands of people coming into the country. Quite often young men coming into the country, young unaccompanied men, I would say. They're not coming over with their families. These are young men of fighting
And the Irish aren't allowed to complain.
The Irish aren't allowed to complain, no. So, what is all that leading up to? Well, I would suggest, and this is really important, familiarise yourself with what Gladio was, because I would suggest that Gladio never finished. So,
okay, let's go ahead and talk about Gladio. I want to get some more detail on that, because we had several times we had Sibel Edmonds on. Sibel was a Iranian that spoke Azerbaijan or Armenian, she offered her services to the government after 9/11. As she's in there, and some Turkish influence, she could see the capture inside the intelligence community. She's going, and then she comes, across Gladio, and she talks about it. She writes a book, and we have her on, and she made a big deal out of Gladio. She was like, "Look, this is the plan. Here they're coming. What they're doing. Of course, they attack her. Yeah, it reminds me, we should check in on her. But Gladio, it was a European thing, as I recall, and it was
NATO.
Okay, NATO. Well, describe that. You mentioned it a couple of times, but I want to make sure we're refreshed on what Gladio was.
So it ran from the late 50s all the way through to the 80s, to the sort of mid 80s. It was a false flag terror campaign run by NATO. We know that it happened. There's no doubt. The evidence is rock solid on Gladio, because we've got a European parliamentary resolution on Gladio, which the European Parliament issued, requesting that NATO stop doing it. It wasn't really run by NATO. When you look into it, it was really run by the CIA and MI6 mainly, and the Italian and French and other European intelligence agencies. The Portuguese intelligence agencies were very much on board with it, but it also extended to the training of assets. So what the idea was that they would use far-right terrorist groups such as Ordine Nuovo in Italy, this is an example, who would commit terrorist atrocities, kill people, kill European citizens, and then they would blame it on far-left terrorists like the Red Brigade. The idea was to instill in European citizens a fear of what was then communist Russia, the Soviet bloc, the Soviets, because the story being that the Soviets are behind the far left terrorists. But of course, it wasn't the far left terrorists that were committing the terrorist acts. It was the far right terrorists, sponsored by, trained and armed by NATO, at the behest of the Western intelligence agencies, who were killing European citizens. Now, similarly, we had a report from the somebody called Sir John Stevens in the UK, who looked at what was called the Troubles in Northern Ireland, that were the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, and the Ulster Defence Forces, and were fighting over Irish independence. And the people in Northern Ireland thought it was largely the Unionists thought that Northern Ireland should stay part of the Union, and the IRA didn't. And there was a conflict over it called the Troubles that went on for 25 years.
Yeah.
Well, it emerges that from the Stevens report that many of the terrorist attacks that took place during that period in Ireland and in the UK, almost certainly, but that although Stevens focused on attacks that took place in Ireland, were instigated by assets of British intelligence agencies, not terrorists acting on their own, not either the Ulster unionists acting on their own, or unionist terrorists acting on their own. They were being guided, they were being steered. They, in some cases, special branch operatives were committing acts of terrorism. So that's very Gladio-like. And then we look at, I mean, it was never exposed as being part of Gladio, but if you look at many of the things that happened during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, there's a distinct whiff of Gladio about a lot of them. Similarly, so if you look at things like shootings in the US, you often see, a terrible shooting has occurred. A lot of people that are labelled conspiracy theorists sometimes point to evidence suggesting that those shootings might not have been what they were portrayed to be. Now, everybody goes, oh, no, that can't be true, that can't be true. But just bear in mind that the focus of everything, and governments use it all the time, is the strategy of tension. So if they can instill a sense of fear in you and say that, there are these marauding terrorists going around all over the place.
Venezuelan gangs.
Yeah, that's another point. Doesn't necessarily have to be terrorists. It can be uncontrolled crime that's got out of hand.
Okay, this is one thing. Let's talk about that a little bit. The mass shootings, when they first started, Columbine, I remember when that came out, and then there was Virginia Tech and so on. There was a editorial page editor of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, is a good friend of mine named Vince Suprenowitz. And he really taught me something. He goes, 3 weeks. Now, whatever the super story is, if they're going to wait 3 weeks. 3 weeks, you'll find out what really is going on. And by that time, they're not covering it anymore, what the real truth is. And what he did is he equated all of these mass shootings and so on had SSRIs. People were, taking ADD medication, Ritalin, they're doing, and it's a warning when you come off of that or you stop taking it for a while, become, suicidal, homicidal, whatever, for a period of time. And he was writing about this, God, in was that, late 90s or something, early 2000s. He's going, look, the link to all of this is these psychotropic meds that they're putting these kids on, like, freaking Tic Tacs, out of the nurse's office or something. He's going, this is the problem. Nobody wants to do it. And even if they know, they're not covering it. Why? Because TV is brought to you by Pfizer. I mean, so do they really marketing you? Are they selling you some, it causes, as they got people going around in fields of flowers, listing off all of the side effects of death, dying, and destruction, but ask your doctor, and you're going, are they really marketing to me? Am I going to ask my doctor? No, they're just paying off the networks with money. We're going to advertise as long as you don't say bad things about us, as long as you don't do investigative reporting, as long as you don't tell the truth about we're just bribing you. So once you realize that, you're going, okay, I get it. This is so, the mass shootings here, and the reason I wanted to focus on that and bring this up, in America, as that happens, there's always somebody now, it's like every other week, you got somebody going to some school and laying waste to somebody because they get attention, or they're being programmed, or you have, the leadership from the left, or even the rhino, politicians going, somebody ought to take out that Trump thing. Not saying you should, but I mean, if somebody did, it'd be a service to humanity, and he's Hitler. So when you have these weak minds, or you have FBI cultivating these relationships, or you freaking fund them, or you have that they're communicating with these people, then the investigation stops. You're not going to hear anything. What happened with the big shooting in Las Vegas, from the Mandalay Bay or whatever it was, the hotel. Yeah. All of a sudden, you get some investigative Ian Davis, looking at it, and they're going, whoa, nothing to see. Vegas? What happened? What are you talking about? I don't know nothing about nothing.
this is really a big thing, a big red flag that I would look out for is if you're familiar with a police investigation, if you know how a police investigation actually works, right? The police don't go into an investigation knowing what happened, right? They don't know what happened. So the police go into an investigation to gather evidence, to piece it together, and to work out what happened. Now, sometimes it might be easier than others, but they don't know the background of the people that are involved. They don't, if it's genuine.
No, but they got a narrative to spell an hour later.
If they know within an hour or two exactly what happened, who was involved, it's all over the media. That they know the nuts and bolts. They know they know who did what, when, why. How many people died, who didn't die, who was injured. They know everything about it within 24 hours. Then that's not a real That's not based on any kind of real investigation.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann. A US official says there are early indications a Russian anti-aircraft system is behind the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane. The aircraft crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day, killing 38 people. The Kremlin has warned against speculating over the cause of the crash while it's still being investigated. Donald Trump is doubling down on his threat to take back control of the Panama Canal. In his Christmas message, the US president-elect reiterated his country's claim to the waterway, which cuts through the American continent, allowing the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to converge, acting as a major marine transportation route. Benji Haya reports.
In announcing his pick for ambassador to Panama, Donald Trump again insisted the Central American nation is, quote, ripping off the United States. Over the years, fees have risen to access the channel, which was built by the US back in the early 1900s and handed over to Panama 25 years ago. The president-elect wants to reassert control over the key trade artery, arguing China is expanding its influence in the channel. Panama has hit back. Its president maintains the canal's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. And neither are Greenland's. The Prime Minister of the world's biggest island has told Donald Trump that the Danish territory is not for sale either, following Trump's suggestion that he'll try to buy it for national security purposes.
Pakistani airstrikes in Afghanistan have killed 46 people, according to Taliban officials. Most of the victims are believed to be women and children. Calling the attack cowardly, the Taliban is now vowing retaliation. Ishan Garg has more.
A Pakistani airstrike in Afghanistan's Paktika province has become the latest flashpoint between the two neighbors. Though Islamabad is yet to comment on the attack, military officials speaking to news agencies say they carried out the strike against a camp of the Pakistani Taliban, a group known as the TTP. The Taliban-led Afghan government says close to half the people killed in the strike were women and children. They claim none of the people who have died were associated with the TTP, a group seen as a terrorist organization by Islamabad. It comes just days after a Pakistani Taliban attack killed 16 Pakistani military personnel close to Paktika province along the border region. Pakistan has seen countless such attacks in the past 2 decades, and it blames the Taliban government for aiding the TTP. Taliban officials in Kabul have criticized the strikes, saying it's a blatant violation of all international principles. They are threatening retaliatory strikes against the Pakistani army, further escalating tensions between the two countries.
And finally, a family dispute at a U.S. airport in Arizona has seen 3 people injured by gunfire and another stabbed. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
There are those that just want to be left alone, and those that just won't leave them alone. Which one are you? The Ernest Hancock Show.
Welcome back to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, and our special guest this evening on the Free Talk Live Network, Ian Davis from the United Kingdom. Oh, he's laying it down for us. We have a lot in common with the people in Great Britain. My question is, you being aware of this, what I wanted to build to is this. When Great Britain looks at the American gun culture and the Second Amendment and all that kind of stuff, all those crazy Yanks, they don't know what the hell's going on. I can't believe they're whatever. And you see all these YouTube videos of they're training their 6-year-old kids with 22s to do kind of whatever. And it's a gun culture, crazy nuts. And then when this stuff kind of happens and they start to threaten some more gun control or whatever, sales skyrocket. You know, it's like you can't buy enough ammunition. Everybody's getting reloading equipment. And, most of my grandchildren have ARs. They might be calibered in .22 or they got, but our family, we're good on guns. Montana, the average gun ownership number per household is 29 guns. And I went, well, I'm kind of light a little bit. I need to get a couple more. So this is, and certainly out here on the land, one of the first things when we actually got we did the roads and everything, we got the bus on the land, the first thing I did is squeeze off a couple of rounds out of each of my guns just because it's, de-virginized, it's, territory claimed, You got to whiz on a bush and shoot your gun. That's just the way it is. So this is... Yeah. Viewed from you in the UK in what way? Like Australia had guns and then they didn't. So you're looking at, those Yanks, they were smart to keep their guns, or they're crazy. What's the attitude amongst you and your friends?
I think in the UK, the kind of attitude was, and certainly my attitude was until a few years ago, that, having guns, having lots and lots of guns in your society, there is an equivalent increase in the murder rate, right? There does seem to be a direct correlation, and certainly that we are told that there is a direct correlation. And if you look at the kind of the comparative murder rate between the US and the UK, for example, there would seem to be an increased incident of murder, probably because, to some extent, it is easier to murder someone in the US than it is to murder someone in the UK. In the UK, you've got to stab them, probably, or run them over, or do something else. You can't just shoot them. However, it's not that straightforward, and it's not that simple, because I think if you look at Canadian gun ownership, I think per capita, that might be higher than the US. So there are other countries that have got just as many guns that don't kill and don't have just as many murders. So the question is, is it gun ownership, or is there some other underlying issue like mass rates of inequality and deprivation and those kind of things that, racial tension, that kind of stuff, mental health, unmet mental health need, that kind of thing? It's not as simple as just saying because a country's got more guns, therefore there'll be a higher murder rate. As far as I haven't looked at this for a couple of years now, but I do remember looking at it and seeing that Canadians had a higher per capita gun ownership than the US, but and a much lower murder rate. But then also something that has increasingly struck me is that obviously, the US has got, the foundation of your country was brought together by militias standing up against an oppressive state, well, namely the British, right? So that's the kind of root foundation of your state. I mean, obviously, there's more than that, but the initial kind of impetus for the United States to be the country that it is today was born from militias standing up against an oppressive overseas government in this case. So the idea that owning your own means of defense is not necessarily a defense against your neighbor, it's a defense against your government. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I do understand why. I didn't. I have to say I didn't. I mean, it took me a while to sort of wrap my head around it myself. But I do understand why, Second Amendment rights are so important to many Americans, and I can appreciate that. And I think, if I was in a gun culture, which I'm not, the British don't have guns, but we've got in British cities, we've got horrendous knife crime problems. I mean, literally gangs. We do have some gun crime, but it's not so much. But we have knife crime that's awful. I mean, children going around hacking each other to death with machetes. Right. So that's that's not a product of. That doesn't mean that knives are necessarily bad. It's all the other things that cause rampant criminality and that are the problems. And I would suggest, and from my perspective now, when I look at America and I think about the gun ownership in America, I would say the same. It feels like the same thing. I mean, obviously, I don't speak for the British. I'm about as atypical as it gets when it comes to the British. but I mean, it's that's what it seems like to me, anyway.
Well, I'm wondering, is there? All right, I'll give you a good example. There was a Alessandro Fusillo from Italia. He's a good friend that is an attorney that helped Europeans keep their wealth. So he had, as a law firm that has offices in Rome, Madrid, and Berlin. So he is, prominent individual. He's got, second homes in the Canary Island. I mean, the boy's got skills. Well, what happened was after he was visiting here in Arizona, and you go everywhere, and everybody's got a sidearm. And if you don't see it, you assume they got it because it's concealed carry, unrestricted anyway. So there was the attack in France when the guys came out with the AK-47s, just started blazing away at people. I don't even know why or what that was about. But
what, the Bataclan? Charlie Hebdo or the Bataclan?
What was it about?
There was a mass shooting in 2016 at a concert. Is it 2016? I think it was, or 2017.
Yeah, and they went around the restaurants. They were all over Paris. They were just,
Yeah, that was the Bataclan. It was.
Well, what was that about? Why did that even happen?
Well, it was supposedly Islamist extreme. The usual Islamist extremists. Kind of protesting against French intervention in Syria, I think, or the Middle East at the time, or it might have been Libya. I'm not sure.
Well, what happened was when that happened, Alessandro's experience here in America, he goes, that would have never happened in Arizona. There'd been like 3 or 4 people stand up and shoot the bad guys. Well, what happened was there was a restaurant in Paris to where they went in, they racked their AK, and there were 3 Colombian drug dealers sitting in the restaurant that heard that, and they go, I know what that is. Stood up, boom, took the guy out. Surprise, surprise, okay? Well, the only place that you saw it and how we knew about it was a gunny friend of ours, that keeps up on this stuff. It was La Prensa or something. It was a Spanish-speaking newspaper in Spain that ran this story because they were Spanish-speaking. They were from Guatemala, I think, Central America somewhere, and Colombia, I think it was. And so they put that out, and they said, look, these guys they heard and stood up and taking heroes. Boom! We're not talking about that one. Nobody gets to know about that. So Alessandro, when he went back to Italy, he penned an article, and it just went stupid all over alternative media because it's called Libertario. But it's libertarian think tank of whatever the heck it is that he's doing there. And it was widely republished everywhere about the reasons that he thinks that Europe and European Union and certainly the individual states should have their version of the Second Amendment. And they're like, whoa, man, them's fighting words. You're not allowed to say that. So when he gave the example, he goes, in America, you may have all the, but, it's always a good guy with a gun taking out a bad guy with a gun. And you either got to wait for somebody or it's some teacher, takes care of business. So this is the mindset that I think is starting to change. These types of injections, you could see that the people going, yeah, that. America's got it. They didn't have to put up with a lot of the lockdown and all that kind of stuff because you have some governors that would say, we're not locking down. And then they got a lesson on how America really works. The small United States, each of the states is their own country, that kind of United States of Europe kind of crap is what they want. But we're starting to assert our states' rights more and more as we see how corrupt the federal, well, it's just states are just as corrupt, but, that we're starting to separate from this concept that we have to do what the president or the Congress or whatever has to say all the time. The fact that the people have ultimate control, ultimate power. I am free because I'm defending my freedom with this here freedom stick, is that permeating Europe at all? Or is it like, no, you got to machete people because, whatever. So give me the idea of guns.
The knife crime stuff in the UK is linked to crime. It's street crime, and it's usually gang warfare, that kind of stuff. So that's not relevant to that issue. I think it's very hard to say in the UK. We had this Brexit movement, which was very, obviously it got a lot of popular support. I mean, there was a referendum and the British voted to leave the EU because they didn't like the idea of, broadly speaking, didn't like the idea of being dictated to by Brussels. So there was that sense of being independent from the European Union, but within, I am firmly of the, I've written a few times about what I call Brino, which is Brexit in name only, right? Because we're still subject to many of the ridiculous thing is that following the Brexit referendum, the whole of all your EU legislation was copied over, lock, stock and barrel was copied over onto the British statute book. So it's all still here. The idea is that bit by bit it will be weeded out as the British courts, that remove one bit and then the next bit and then the next bit. But that hasn't happened yet. So it doesn't seem like it's likely. And there's obviously a lot of people in Britain that would like to rejoin the European Union. So there's that thing. Broadly speaking, I think the British are a little bit more resistant following the lockdowns and following the because it goes back to the unfairness thing. And I think for a lot of British people, they're not very happy about the waste of money. We had £37 billion was spent on the NHS Test and Trace app, and I don't know anyone. I was speaking to someone the other day that's ever used it, even seen it. Where did £37 billion go? Nobody really knows. So things like that annoy the British. They get upset about it. But unfortunately, I do not get any kind of sense. It's difficult because I move in a community and I live in a community where everybody has a similar outlook to mine. From my perspective, none of us think much about the state of government in the UK, but looking at it more broadly, people, it's the same old, I would say, the statist disease. They're happy to devolve their responsibilities and their duties to to live in peace and maintain justice. They've devolved that to others while they get on with the business of bringing up the kids and going to work and looking after themselves. And hopefully, if they've got any money left at the end of the week, they'll go down the pub on Friday night or go out.
Okay, that brings up a good question here. This is what British people, are they starting to get a sense of their biggest threat is government itself? I mean, does that enter into? Are they starting to go, whoa, we don't need to fix it. We need to get rid of it. And that will segue your answer in that. I think, before we wrap up, the segment segue into Trump and his administration coming in and DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, as if there wasn't a biggest oxymoron. That you have this dismantling of a lot of this crap, these stupid the money that's just like a sieve is just going out everywhere doing nothing except enriching whatever and the big guy getting their cuts and so on. So I'm just like, what do you think is going to be the result of this effort? And in Britain, is there even that effort?
No, well, I think if you look at things like the Department of Government Efficiency, which Musk was, all behind in the US. What that is really is, that sounds a lot to me like Taylorism, which was big in the progressive era in the United States in the 1920s and 30s, which is that efficiency is elevated above everything, which is the kind of basis for technocracy, which wouldn't be surprising coming from Musk, seeing as his grandfather was a leading light in Technocracy Inc., which was set up technocracy in the US in the 1930s. So that kind of thing, small state, also lends itself into something called the Dark Enlightenment, which is something that Peter Thiel is an advocate of. And they talk about breaking the state up into its constituent parts using a process called caramelization, where they would put a monetary, financial, or tokenized, and again, this leads us into the digital economy, tokenization, where they would put a kind of ballpark figure on the value of the function of various government departments and sell them off to private individuals. To private corporations who could manage them more efficiently. Now, if you look at the DOGE, that seems to be on the cards. So that's when you're talking about these kind of things that probably most Americans even aren't aware of things like the Dark Enlightenment. I've written a post on that, which is on my website if you want to read about it. They're talking about breaking the state up into its constituent parts and selling it off to private concerns because they can run it, supposedly, multinational corporations are more efficient than government departments. That's the idea. But the problem is with that is that when you give private corporate enterprises political authority, the other word for that is fascism. So that's a little bit alarming, I would suggest, for American citizens if they're looking at that kind of stuff. And I don't see the Trump administration resisting that. In fact, I see them heading quite quickly towards it. So that would be a bit of a concern, because one of the things that I talk about is something which I call public-private partnership. And I talk about a model I think that the world operates under called a global public-private partnership, which is all mixed up with, you mentioned him quite a few times, Klaus Schwab's concept of stakeholder capitalism, which is that same idea. Stakeholder capitalism is the merging of the public and private state, hitherto called fascism. So that model is surging ahead everywhere, and it looks to be surging ahead quite quickly in the US under the Trump administration, the soon-to-be Trump administration. So, that's something that people perhaps might want to have a look at and consider, because that's the same is happening in Europe, the same is happening in Asia, the same is happening everywhere. This idea of, some countries are further down that path of a fusion between the public and private than others. China, for one, they're indivisible. Companies like Alipay and companies like that, which is the second biggest payment provider, and Tencent and companies like that are practically arms of the state. It's the same entity almost. And you could say the same about other countries as well, where this kind of process of linking the public and the private state together in quote unquote partnerships, and that's happening at the global governance level as well. So you've got like the World Economic Forum, which represents 200 or more now of the world's leading global corporations, has a partnership with the United Nations to deliver sustainable development goals. So, sustainable development goals are being delivered in the interests of the World Economic Forum's corporate membership. Otherwise, they wouldn't be partners with the UN to deliver those kind of things.
Well, is that starting to go away? I mean, are we having, the ESG and DEI and all in the military? Here comes the American people. I don't know if it surprised Great Britain or not, but the American people, you have like 300 and something million people. Half of them, whatever percentages, say half of them are eligible to actually vote. They're of age, they're not infirm, they're not felons, whatever. You got that. And then you got about half of them that actually register, then about half of them that actually vote, then about half of them that, won. So you get 13% of America. Now, I did the numbers years ago, and it was in the teens. That you got people that are having any influence on how we're being governed or whatever. So I'm telling you, how you're being governed is how you're allowing yourself to be governed. That's how it's working. So I am just so not, I don't see politics as, cause I've been involved. I mean, long story. I challenged, I got a dozen lawsuits. Me always challenging government, pissing me off, and I'm just waiting them on the land. I got something for you. You guys want to get some of this on you? Bring it. We're going to have some fun. But the point is that people don't understand how powerful they are to control their own life. Now, they want to be able to control everybody's individual. That's what this social credit score, the GoldmanSachs.gov coin's about. I mean, whatever the hell is going on, which is what they're turning Bitcoin into. Bitcoin, that's why I interviewed Roger Ver. We're friends. I've had him on many times. And he came on, talked about his book, Hijacking Bitcoin. Boom, a week, two later, he's arrested. So he might even get a pardon. So this is, we don't think we know. We know. They're bad guys. They're bad. Government bad. So what happens is, how do we interface our lives to keep breathing in and out, to be satisfied, our own activities distracted from all that's going, how far out in the desert you got to go, what country you got to go to, what you never escape here. And what always happens in these forums, it goes like this. The R or D will get up and I got a plan. What's your plan for? I got a plan. This is my plan. And the other party gets up and go, that plan sucks. I got a plan. My plan's better than his plan. And then, the libertarian, get up and you go, my plan is you get to have your own plan. How about that? You run you. No, that's not a plan. We need somebody. I'm going, that's my plan. You get to have your own plan. How about that? And the government's there to protect your life, liberty, your pursuit of happiness, your happenstance, your circumstance. You get to decide. And then, of course, I like that property protection thing, too. So here is the mindset that we're going into up against what? People that believe they are bred, they are brought up thinking that they are your betters, that they're going to rule you, and they're going to do it as long as they can until they cannot. And the reason they can is because you, not necessarily you, Ian, but you are letting them. It's that simple. You just decentralize God, take care of it. So when you do that, you uncouple from this larger thing and you get more down to community, local area, as far as I can see on the horizon, which here in Arizona I can see pretty far. So that is my area. That is what I concern myself with. My 4 children, my 12 grandchildren, immediate and extended family, we're good.
Be distracted. We take away their freedom, and still they'll roar. The beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, it's the sand of the Colosseum. He'll bring them death, and they will love him for it.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first nearly a